Welcome to the Pitch Recognition Tutorial Series, created by the junior high band teachers of the Gilbert Unified School District in Gilbert, Arizona. Pitch Recognition Number 1, Staff, Clefs, and Ledger Lines. A portion of the materials in this tutorial were taken from musictheory.net, a fantastic website to help students understand many facets of music theory. At the end of this tutorial, you should understand the function of the musical staff, the difference between a treble clef and a bass clef, the use of ledger lines above the staff, and the use of ledger lines below the staff. The staff is the foundation upon which notes are drawn. Basically, it's this collection of 5 lines and 4 spaces where music is written. The 5 lines and 4 spaces are numbered starting from the bottom. So the bottom line is number 1, and then we go up to the next lines 2, 3, 4, and 5. Same with the spaces. The bottom space in between the lines is space number 1, and then we go up from there 2, 3, and 4. Every line or space on the staff represents a white key on the keyboard. So you can see as the notes are going up on the staff, the notes on the keyboard are moving to the right. That means that the higher a note is on the staff, the higher the note should sound. And the lower the note is on a staff, the lower the note should sound. Clefs assign individual notes to certain lines or spaces. In other words, each of the clef signs determines what the names of the lines and spaces are going to be. Without clef signs, it's just the staff. None of these lines you see here have a name. We have to add a staff so that we know what names to put with the lines and spaces. The 2 most common clefs are the treble clef and the bass clef. A treble clef shows us notes in the middle to upper range, and the bass clef defines the notes for the lower range and lower instruments. But for our class, everybody is going to learn how to use both clefs. First, we will discuss the treble clef. It's also called the G clef. This part of the treble clef circles the second line. The second line is called G. Any note placed on this line becomes a G. There are only 7 letters in the musical alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. After G, we start over again with letter A. As we go higher on the staff, we go forward in the alphabet. The note on the space above G is A. Remember, there is no H note. If we keep going higher, we continue to go forward in the alphabet. The note on the line above the A is then B. So the process continues. We keep going up, alternating from line to space to line to space in order, and then continue forward in the alphabet. We started on our G, went up to the next space, which is A, then continued to the next line B, the next space C, the line D, the space E, the line F, and then sitting above the F on the very top space is another G. Are we out of notes? Is this all there is? Well, no, of course not. Our clarinets and flutes in particular play a lot of notes that are higher than this G. So how do we fix this problem? The answer is another vocabulary term: ledger lines. A ledger line is a small line that extends the staff when we run out of room. This ledger line is really just a small piece of a really long line. Our staff could continue way more than 5 lines and 4 spaces. So we draw the ledger line, and then we put our note on it. And then we have the next A. If we wanted to keep going, we could. For instance, we now know that a note that's drawn on the top space above the F is a G. And we know if we want to go higher, we have to draw a ledger line and then put a note on the ledger line, and there's our A. But we could still go higher. First we draw our ledger line, and then we put a note on the space above it. That note becomes a B. Could we keep going? Yes, we can. But now we need a second ledger line if we want to go higher. So we draw another ledger line and put a note on it. That note becomes a C. If we draw a note in a space, the G is in a space and the B is in a space, we do not put a ledger line on top of it. So a note is going to be on a ledger line, meaning the ledger line goes through it, or above a ledger line to show that it's in a space. Ledger lines work in both directions. If we have a note on a bottom line, that note is an E. If we drop just below the E to the space directly beneath it, we go backwards in the alphabet because we're going down. That note is a D. If we want to continue past the D and go into lower notes, we need to add a ledger line. Draw the note on the line. And now we have the note C. We can still go lower. We draw our ledger line and draw the note just below the ledger line in the space that's underneath it. And now we have a B. And in this case, because it's a space, we don't need to draw another ledger line underneath it. But we can still go even lower. We need another ledger line. We draw the note on that ledger line. And we have a low A. And notice that while we're going down the staff, the notes get lower and we go backwards in the alphabet. Next, let's discuss the bass clef. This is also called the F clef. Notice the two dots right here and right here. Those two dots frame the fourth line. The staff line in between those two dots is F, but the process for figuring out the rest of the notes is the same. Another way to help you remember that the bass clef is also called the F clef is just to visualize what would happen if we straightened out this part of the clef. If we straightened it out, we would just have a straight line. And if we take our two dots from over here and we put our dots here and then connect them to our straight line, we have an F, the F clef. We can now fill the rest of the staff with the other notes. So notice as we go up, we started on F. When we go to the next space, we go to the next letter of the alphabet. Because we're going up, we go forward in the alphabet. So the next letter is G. We continue going up to the next line. That becomes an A. If we start on our F and we go down, we go backwards in the alphabet. Starting on the F line, if we go down one space, we go to the E and continue all the way down. Ledger lines work the same way in bass clef that they do in treble clef. We already know that the fourth line is called F. That means that the top line is an A. Remember, the space in between would be a G. If we go above the A, it's a B. If we want to keep going, now we have to add our ledger line, draw a note on the ledger line, and now we have the note C. We can still go higher, drawing a ledger line and putting a note in the space above it. That note is D. It doesn't matter what the shape of the note is. It just matters where it's located. So if we go one more higher, we're going to need another ledger line. And we put this note on the ledger line, through the ledger line. And that becomes the note E. The shape of the note has nothing to do with the letter name. And just like with the treble clef, the same thing works if we go down in the opposite direction. So the bottom line in bass clef is called G. If we go below the G to the next space, we go backwards in the alphabet, and that note becomes an F. If we want to go lower, we need a ledger line. We draw the note on the ledger line and go backwards in the alphabet. So that's an E when using bass clef. We can continue drawing a ledger line, a note below the ledger line, going down in the alphabet. And if we go any lower than that, we have to add another ledger line. Here we have the note C. Just like in treble clef, notice that when the notes are going down, they get lower in sound and we go backwards in the alphabet. This leads us to discussing something called the grand staff. It's a theoretical staff consisting of 11 lines. The reason we call it a theoretical staff is because we would never actually really use it. Can you imagine trying to read your music, playing a song with all of these lines and spaces, and having to figure out the letter names of the notes and which fingers to push down all in an instant so you could play the song? It would be practically impossible. But watch what happens when we take out the middle line. We end up with two regular staffs, an upper staff and a lower staff. The upper staff would handle the middle range and higher sounds, and the lower staff would handle the lower sounds. By adding a treble clef to the top staff and a bass clef to the bottom staff, we can see the relationship between the two staffs. So remember, we started with 11 lines. We took out the middle line, and we ended with two separate staves and our clef signs at the front. And there's our magic note. It's called middle C because it corresponds to the middle staff line on the grand staff. Notice how the ledger lines tie in with these notes. The top line of the bass clef is called A. The space above that is B. If we want to go higher, we draw this ledger line, and now we have a C. The same thing works in reverse for treble clef. We know that the bottom line of the treble clef is an E. If we go down to the space right below the E on treble clef, we go backwards in the alphabet one letter and we get a D. If we want to go lower than the D, we have to add a ledger line, which is the one right there, and we get the same middle C. And that's where the two staves cross. This tutorial defined the musical staff and showed how the treble clef sign and bass clef sign determine the letter names of the lines and spaces associated with the staff. It also explained the use of ledger lines for notes that extend beyond the staff. The next tutorial in this series introduces half steps, whole steps, and accidentals.